am so delighted to show you how to make these tulip socks. I'm upcycling a knit sweater I found at the op shop. It's nice and stretchy, which will be perfect for these socks. I'm cutting out the pattern, which I have linked in the description box below if you'd like to make them as well. To create a little bit of structure on the petals, I'm using some fabric from my scrap collection. You could use felt or any kind of woven fabric that's a little bit stiff. And I'm sewing that onto the pattern pieces that will be on the inside of the sock. Then I put one inside and one outside piece, right sides together, and sew the tops of the petals. I'm using a straight stitch with a stitch length of 2 to get a nice tight curve, and just take it slow around that curve. I'm using some pinking shears to remove the bulk at the seam. If I had an overlocker, I would overlock these seams, but I don't. And that's fine, you don't need one. From here on out, we're gonna be working with the lining and the shell as 2 separate pieces. So I'm gonna sew the center front seams of the lining together. And I'm gonna go right up to the edge of where we sewed the petal, take it out of my machine, and then on the other side, sew the center front of the outside piece. Next, we're going to create the little pocket for our toes. So to create those curved shapes, you just have to close up these little seams on each piece. And make sure you backstitch at the beginning and end of your stitching to keep these nice and secure. Now, if we open up the sock like this, we're going to match the bottom seams together. Now, when you sew those closed, you're going to leave a 2-inch gap on the side with the lining. At the end, that's going to be hidden, but we need that little hole to be able to turn it all out and make it seamless. And with the little toe box, I'm going to soften that corner because it's become a little bit stretched out in the sewing process. So I just want to remove that bulk. All right, we have the main part of the sock and the heel, and we need to put the heel into the sock. So it's very easy. Make sure that the lining pieces are all the right side up and match that side seam. And as you follow it down, you'll be able to match these seams together. And then keep following it back around. And do that on both sides. Now we want to make sure that all these junctions connect as seamlessly as possible. The easiest way to do this is to put your pin through where the line of sewing ends on one side, and then through the other piece of fabric to align those 2 pieces of stitching. And then very carefully start your seam from that point. And then you can sew the rest of the seam very easily. When I get to the point where these 2 seams match up, I'm just going to double check that they're both pressed open. And I'm also going to soften that pointy curve a little bit as well. And the middle of this seam is a good point to stop with the needle in the fabric, lift your presser foot, and just turn everything around and rearrange it to make sure that you're not accidentally sewing over the wrong part of the sock. That was the hardest part over. Now we get to turn it inside out and view the final sock. Use your fingers to roll out the edge of the petals and make them nice and round. If there's any little holes in between the petals, you can just take a needle and hand stitch them closed. I also went up about 1 centimeter to just bring the petals a little closer together, but that's personal preference. Lastly, with a needle and thread, just close up that seam on the bottom of the foot, and this is going to be on the inside of the sock because it's the lining side. This is how they turned out. They're kind of like little booties, but you can also wear them with shoes. If you would like to sew your own pair, the pattern is linked in the description box below. Thank you so much for watching, and subscribe for more sewing tutorials.